Welcome to our deep dive into the fascinating world of fungi. You've given us a mountain of articles and research about fungi, and it's clear you want to really get into the nitty-gritty of how these organisms impact us, like from the tiniest levels up to huge ecosystems.
Yeah, it's true. Fungi are often overlooked, but as we'll see, they have a much bigger impact on human life than most people think. You might be surprised by some of the things we've learned from your research.
Okay, so you've mentioned before that our bodies are like teeming with fungi. Can you tell me more about this mycobiome? Why should I care about it?
Well, the human microbiome is basically this hidden world of fungi that live on and inside us. It's part of the larger human microbiome, which is all the bacteria, viruses, and other microorganisms that live on us. And what's fascinating is that most of these fungi aren't harmful. In fact, they're actually really important for keeping us healthy.
Oh,
They help to regulate the balance of bacteria on our skin and our gut, kind of like tiny gardeners, keeping a delicate ecosystem in check.
that's pretty wild. But I also read about some fungi that can be harmful, like Candida auris. What makes this one so dangerous?
You're right to be concerned about Candida auris. It's become a serious global threat, actually. In recent years, this yeast has become resistant to many antifungal medicines, which makes it super difficult to treat. And what's really scary is that it can cause severe infections, especially in hospitals. It's a stark reminder that while many fungi can be good for us, some pose serious risks, especially for those with weakened immune systems.
So if we're covered in all these fungi, the good and the bad, how do we even get them in the first place?
Well, the journey starts at birth. Newborns acquire fungi from their mothers during vaginal delivery and through breast milk.
Hmm.
It's fascinating, right? How these early microbial encounters can shape our health later in life.
Hmm.
And as we grow, we constantly come into contact with fungal spores in the environment. These spores are constantly shaping our microbiome. We get them through the air we breathe, the food we eat, even the things we touch.
It's amazing to think that all these invisible interactions are happening all the time. One of the things that really stood out to me in the research you shared was the connection between fungi and asthma. What's the story there?
You know, a lot of people don't realize it, but there's a strong link between fungi and asthma. Fungal spores can trigger asthma attacks in people who are sensitive to them. Research actually suggests that fungal spores are one of the main causes of asthma. You see, they can trigger inflammation and constrict airways in the lungs. Essentially, these microscopic irritants can cause a lot of trouble for the respiratory system.
I also read about how thunderstorms can make asthma worse because of how they affect fungal spores. How does that work?
That's a phenomenon called thunderstorm asthma. Scientists are still trying to understand exactly how it works, but it seems that the strong winds and rain from thunderstorms can lift a huge number of fungal spores into the air. This creates a spike in spore concentration, which can trigger serious asthma attacks in susceptible people. It's a fascinating example of how weather patterns can have a direct impact on our health.
So if you have asthma, you probably don't want to be outside during a thunderstorm. Speaking of things that might make you want to stay indoors, some of the research you sent talked about how fungi can cause brain infections. What can you tell me about that?
Right. Fungal infections of the brain are serious, especially for people with compromised immune systems. One that's particularly alarming is mucormycosis, which is caused by a group of molds found in soil and decaying matter.
Wait, are you saying that the same mold growing on that old fruit in my fridge could infect my brain?
Yeah, it might sound crazy, but it's true. Rhizopus and mucor are two common culprits. They're usually harmless in the environment, but they can take advantage of weakened immune systems and cause infections. We call these opportunistic pathogens.
That is unsettling. How do those molds even get into the brain?
Well, it usually starts with inhaling the fungal spores. They can then get into the sinuses. For people with healthy immune systems, these spores are no match for our defenses. But in those with weakened immunity, like people with uncontrolled diabetes or those on immunosuppressant drugs, the molds can take hold and spread really fast.
And what happens then? How does it affect the brain?
The mold can start in the sinuses and spread to nearby tissue, like the eye sockets, facial bones, and even the brain. This aggressive growth can be really damaging. It can lead to disfigurement, vision loss, and even death.
It's scary to think that something so seemingly harmless can become such a serious threat. Are there any other ways people can get fungal brain infections?
Yeah, although inhalation is common, it's not the only way. In some rare cases, fungal infections of the brain can happen because of trauma. Like a head injury could expose the brain to environmental fungi. We read about a young athlete named Sasha Elterman who fell into polluted water after a bridge collapsed. The water was full of mud that was contaminated with a fungus called Cedosporium, and she developed a severe brain infection.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about having a weak immune system, but also about the situations that expose us to these opportunistic fungi. Did Sasha recover?
Her story is really inspiring, actually. She was in critical care for months, had several surgeries, and was treated with a new antifungal medication. But she made an amazing recovery. She even got to carry the Olympic torch in the 2000 Sydney Games. It's a real testament to her resilience and the power of modern medicine.
That's incredible. It's a story of hope amidst this unsettling reality of fungal infections. It makes you realize that even something as simple as swimming in a river can have unforeseen consequences. Speaking of unforeseen consequences, I was really intrigued by the research you shared about the possibility of fungi living in the brain, even without an obvious infection.
Yeah, that's actually a hot topic in mycology research right now. Some scientists believe that fungi might be part of a hidden microbiome within the brain, even in healthy people. But these findings are still very preliminary. We need a lot more research to figure out if they're really there and what role they might play.
So there's a chance that we have this whole ecosystem of fungi living in our brains, and we're only just starting to understand it.
Exactly. It's a fascinating idea, but a little unsettling too. If fungi are part of the brain's microbiome, it could change how we think about brain health and disease. It could even lead to new treatments, maybe targeting these fungi to treat neurological conditions. But again, more research is needed.
It's amazing to think about the potential discoveries that are out there as we learn more about the brain and the role fungi might be playing in its inner workings. Let's shift from the brain to the gut. What can you tell me about the role of fungi in our digestive system?
Well, just like other parts of our bodies, the gut microbiome is this really complex ecosystem that we're only just starting to grasp. We know that bacteria are the main players in the gut, but fungi are there too in significant numbers. We're talking billions of fungal cells living in our digestive systems, all interacting with each other, with the bacteria, and with our own cells.
So the gut is like a microbial metropolis, with fungi as some of the key residents. Why haven't we heard more about the gut microbiome before?
You're right, it's like a bustling city down there. One reason we haven't heard as much about fungi in the gut is that until recently, we didn't have the tools to study them as well as we could study bacteria.
Oh, okay.
Also, there are fewer fungi than bacteria in the gut, so they were often overlooked. But now, with things like DNA sequencing, we can finally delve deeper into the fungal side of the gut microbiome.
So we're just beginning to understand how important they are.
Exactly. And what we're finding is that the gut microbiome is more important for our health than we initially thought.
What are some of the key things we're learning?
Well, one fascinating thing is that there's a core group of fungi that are common in the healthy human gut. And we can compare this core microbiome to the fungal communities found in people with different diseases. This helps us see if there are any specific fungi linked to certain health conditions. It's like taking a microbial census and looking for patterns that might clue us in on how diseases develop and progress.
That's a really clever approach. What kinds of diseases are we talking about?
Well, the research suggests that fungi might be involved in a really wide range of conditions, from metabolic disorders like obesity to inflammatory diseases like inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, and even some types of cancer. The research is still ongoing, but it's pretty exciting. It could lead to new ways to diagnose and treat these diseases.
So it's another example of how fungi can be both helpful and harmful when it comes to our health.
That's nice.
Speaking of helpful, I'm curious about how the gut microbiome actually develops. Where do these fungi come from?
Well, the journey of the gut microbiome begins at birth, just like the fungi on our skin. Newborns get fungi from their mothers during vaginal delivery and through breastfeeding. This early exposure is really important. It helps to create a healthy gut microbiome and it trains the immune system. It's a great example of how microbial inheritance can shape our health from the very beginning.
So there's a transfer of beneficial fungi from mother to child.
Right. This early exposure helps to seed the infant's gut with a diverse community of fungi, which is the foundation for a healthy gut ecosystem. It's also important to remember that the way a baby is born and fed can affect the composition of their gut microbiome. For instance, babies born by C-section or those who are formula-fed might have different fungal communities in their gut compared to those born vaginally and breastfed, and these differences could have an impact on their health later in life.
Wow, that's fascinating. So something as simple as how we're born and fed can have a lasting impact on our microbial communities. What about our environment? Does that play a role in shaping the gut microbiome?
Absolutely. The environment we live in, the food we eat, the medications we take, and even our lifestyle choices all contribute to the ever-changing landscape of our gut microbiome. For example, research has shown that the gut microbiome can differ based on whether someone lives in a rural or urban area, eats a diet high in fiber or processed foods, or takes antibiotics. It's a really complex interplay of factors, and scientists are still working to understand all the variables.
So our gut microbiome is kind of like a fingerprint, unique to each of us and shaped by our experiences. You mentioned that the gut microbiome is linked to asthma. Can you tell me more about that connection?
Right, the gut-lung axis is this really interesting concept that shows how interconnected these two seemingly distant parts of our bodies are. Research is revealing more and more links between the gut microbiome and lung health, including the development and severity of asthma.
Whoa, that's wild. How does that even work? It seems strange that the fungi in my gut could be affecting my lungs.
I know, it might seem counterintuitive, but the gut is a major player in immune development and regulation. And what happens in the gut doesn't stay in the gut. Immune cells and signaling molecules can travel throughout the body, impacting immune responses in other organs, like the lungs. Disruptions in the gut microbiome, especially early in life, can throw the immune system out of whack, making someone more likely to develop allergies and asthma.
So it's not just about the fungi themselves, but about how they influence the immune system as a whole.
Precisely. The gut microbiome helps to train the immune system to distinguish between harmless and harmful things. When this training goes wrong, the immune system can overreact to harmless things like pollen or dust mites, leading to allergic reactions and inflammation in the lungs. So having a healthy and diverse gut microbiome might actually help protect against asthma.
That's incredible. It really highlights how interconnected our bodies are. You also mentioned that the gut microbiome is linked to obesity. How could fungi be playing a role in weight gain?
Well, the gut microbiome has been linked to the many factors that contribute to obesity. It's still an active area of research, but studies have shown that the gut microbiome of people who are obese is different from that of lean individuals. This suggests that certain types of fungi might be associated with weight gain.
So there's a difference in the types of fungi present in the gut of obese individuals.
That's what the research is pointing to. The exact mechanisms are still being investigated, but some scientists think that certain fungi might be better at extracting energy from food, which could contribute to weight gain. Others might influence appetite hormones or inflammation in the gut, further contributing to metabolic imbalances.
That's fascinating. So the gut microbiome could be a potential target for addressing obesity. Could we manipulate these fungal communities to promote weight loss?
That's the hope. It's a really active area of research, and there's a lot of excitement about the potential for developing targeted therapies to adjust the gut microbiome and help people lose weight. Imagine a future where we could have personalized probiotic cocktails designed to tweak the gut microbiome and help people achieve a healthy weight.
It's amazing to think about the possibilities.
Yeah.
What about the connection between the gut microbiome and inflammatory bowel disease? What have we learned about that?
Inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD, is a chronic condition that causes inflammation in the digestive tract. And research are showing that the gut microbiome might play a role in how this complex disease develops and progresses.
So fungi could be contributing to the inflammation in the gut.
That's one possibility. Studies have shown that people with IBD often have different gut microbiomes compared to healthy individuals. For example, they might have less diversity in their fungal communities or an overabundance of certain types of fungi. But we still don't know for sure whether these changes are a cause or a result of the disease. More research is needed to understand these complicated relationships.
It sounds like we're just starting to unravel the mysteries of the gut microbiome and how it impacts IBD. What about the link between fungi and cancer?
The relationship between fungi and cancer is a tricky one. Studies have shown that some types of fungi can actually promote the development of cancer, while others might have protective effects.
So it's a double-edged sword, just like we've seen with other aspects of human health.
Exactly. For instance, some fungi produce toxins called mycotoxins that can damage DNA and increase the risk of cancer. But on the other hand, other fungi might stimulate the immune system, which could potentially help fight cancer cells or make cancer treatments more effective.
So it's a delicate balance, and we need more research to understand how we can use the power of fungi to prevent and treat cancer.
You got it. And the gut microbiome is a particularly exciting area of research when it comes to cancer. Scientists are looking into how specific types of fungi in the gut might influence the development and progression of different cancers. This research could lead to new strategies for preventing and treating cancer, possibly by targeting the gut microbiome. Think about a future where we could have personalized dietary or probiotic interventions that could change the gut microbiome and lower the risk of cancer.
It's amazing to think about how this research could change our approach to cancer.
Mm.
Are there any other efforts underway to manipulate the gut microbiome for therapeutic purposes?
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in figuring out ways to optimize the gut microbiome to improve overall health and prevent or treat diseases. This includes things like dietary changes, such as eating prebiotics and probiotics that encourage the growth of beneficial fungi. It also includes things like fecal microbiota transplantation, or FMT, which involves transferring fecal matter from a healthy person to someone who's sick to restore a healthy balance of gut microbes.
FMT. So we're talking about poop transplants.
It might sound unconventional, but FMT has had remarkable success in treating some gut disorders, and now research is exploring its potential for a wider range of conditions, including those that are influenced by the gut microbiome.
It seems like we're just scratching the surface when it comes to understanding the gut microbiome and how it can be used for personalized medicine. It's a really exciting time for this area of research.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see what discoveries are made in the next few years.
Let's switch gears a bit and talk about the long history between humans and fungi. The research you shared talked about how fungi have been used in food production for centuries. Tell me more about that. What's the connection there?
Humans and fungi have a fascinating history, especially when it comes to food. Our ancestors discovered, maybe by chance, that they could use fungi to transform raw ingredients into delicious and long-lasting food. One of the earliest and most widespread examples of this is fermentation.
Oh, I love fermented foods. What exactly is fermentation and how are fungi involved?
Well, fermentation is a process where microorganisms, including fungi like yeasts, break down sugars without oxygen. This process produces all sorts of byproducts, like alcohol, carbon dioxide, and lactic acid. And these byproducts can change the flavor, texture, and shelf life of food dramatically, creating all sorts of fermented goodies that people around the world have enjoyed for thousands of years.
So when I'm enjoying a sourdough loaf or a piece of aged cheese, I'm actually tasting the results of fungal activity.
You got it. And it's not just bread and cheese. Think about beer, wine, yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, all made possible thanks to those tiny but mighty fungi.
It's incredible how something we can't even see can have such a big impact on our food and culinary traditions. Let's start with bread. Can you explain how fungi are involved in bread making?
Sure. Saccharomyces cerevisiae, also known as baker's yeast, is the star of the show when it comes to bread making. This tiny fungus, a type of single-celled yeast, feeds on the sugars in bread dough and produces carbon dioxide gas as a byproduct. Those gas bubbles get trapped in the dough, causing it to rise, which gives bread its airy texture.
So those tiny air pockets that make bread so fluffy are actually created by a fungus. It's amazing how something so small can have such a big effect. What about cheese? How do fungi play a part in cheese making?
Cheese making is a complex process that involves a whole team of microbes, and fungi are definitely key players. Specific types of molds and yeasts are added during cheese making, and they break down lactose, the sugar in milk, which produces lactic acid. That's what gives cheese its tangy flavor. And these fungi are also really important for developing the unique flavors and textures of different types of cheese.
That's really cool. Can you give us some specific examples of how fungi are used in cheese making?
Of course. Think about blue cheese, for example. Those blue veins that give it its characteristic look and sharp flavor are actually colonies of Penicillium roqueforti.
Oh, wow.
This mold is added on purpose during cheese making, and its enzymes help create the cheese's strong smell and creamy texture. It's like a controlled invasion of mold that ends up being a culinary masterpiece.
So the mold that we try to avoid on other foods is actually a key ingredient in some of our favorite cheeses. That's pretty amazing. What other cheeses rely on fungi for their unique characteristics?
There are so many delicious examples. Think about camembert and brie, which have those soft white rinds. Those rinds are actually made by Penicillium camemberti, which gives the cheese its distinctive aroma and contributes to its creamy texture. The world of fungi is a cheese lover's paradise.
I love how different molds can create such a variety of flavors and textures in cheese. What about other fermented foods? Are there any examples that might surprise people?
Oh, absolutely. Fungi are used to make a huge variety of fermented foods beyond bread and cheese. Aspergillus oryzae, or koji mold, is a great example. It's used in East Asia to break down starches in soybeans and rice to make things like soy sauce, miso, and suk, which are staples in Asian cuisine.
So this one mold is like a tiny culinary factory, turning basic ingredients into flavorful and nutritious staples. I read about a fermented food from Iceland called hakarl. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, hakarl. It's considered a delicacy in Iceland, but it's definitely not for everyone. It's made from fermented Greenland shark meat that's been buried in sand for several weeks to allow it to ferment.
Buried shark meat. That sounds intense. What role do fungi play in this process?
The fermentation of hawkarl is driven by a combination of bacteria and fungi, including yeasts and molds. These microbes break down the shark meat and produce ammonia as a byproduct. The ammonia gives hawkarl its strong smell and chewy texture.
I can only imagine. It sounds like a truly unique culinary experience. It's incredible how different cultures have used the power of fungi to create such a wide array of fermented foods. What about the medicinal uses of fungi? What can you tell me about that?
Medicinal mushrooms have been used in traditional medicine for centuries, especially in Asia. And now, scientists are increasingly interested in studying how they might be used to treat and prevent diseases.
So, there's a mix of ancient wisdom and modern science when it comes to medicinal mushrooms. What are some of the mushrooms that are used medicinally?
Some of the most studied ones are reishi, shiitake, maitake, and lion's mane.
I've heard of those. What are some of the potential health benefits of these mushrooms?
For example, reishi mushrooms have been traditionally used to promote calmness and sleep, and some studies suggest that they might help reduce inflammation and boost the immune system. Shiitake mushrooms are a good source of protein and fiber, and they contain compounds that might help lower cholesterol. Maitake mushrooms are thought to have immune-enhancing properties, and lion's mane mushrooms are being studied for their potential to improve cognitive function and protect the brain from neurodegenerative diseases.
Wow. Sounds like they're packed with nutrients. What does the science say about these claims? Is there any evidence to support their medicinal use?
Research on medicinal mushrooms is still in its early stages, but there's a growing body of evidence that supports some of the benefits people claim they have. Many of the bioactive compounds found in these mushrooms have shown promising results in lab studies and some clinical trials.
That's encouraging. What are some of the challenges in studying medicinal mushrooms? Is it difficult to measure their effects?
One of the challenges is that the composition of these mushrooms can vary a lot depending on things like the species, the growing conditions, and how they're processed. This makes it hard to standardize the doses used in studies and to compare results across different studies. Another challenge is that a lot of the studies have been small and have some limitations in their design. So we need more rigorous research to fully understand the benefits and risks of medicinal mushrooms and figure out the best ways to use them.
So it's important to approach medicinal mushrooms with a healthy dose of skepticism and to talk to a doctor before using them as a treatment for any health condition, right?
Absolutely. It's crucial to remember that medicinal mushrooms shouldn't be seen as a replacement for conventional medicine. They should only be used as a complementary therapy under the supervision of a healthcare professional who can assess their safety and whether they're appropriate for your individual situation.
That's good advice. Let's move on to a topic that's a bit more serious.
Yeah.
The dangers of fungi. We've already talked about fungal infections and mycotoxins, but are there other dangers we should be aware of?
Definitely. Fungi can be both good and bad for us, and it's important to know about the potential dangers. One area of concern is poisonous mushrooms.
Poisonous mushrooms. I've heard stories about people getting sick from eating wild mushrooms. How dangerous are they?
Some mushrooms are highly poisonous, and eating them can be fatal. The death cap mushroom, Amanita phalloides, is one of the most notorious. It's responsible for most of the deaths from mushroom poisoning worldwide.
What makes it so deadly? Why are some mushrooms so toxic?
Well, the death cap contains these really potent toxins called amatoxins that can cause severe damage to the liver and kidneys. They mess with cellular processes and can lead to organ failure and death if they aren't treated quickly. And what makes them even more dangerous is that the symptoms of poisoning might not show up for several hours, so people might not realize they've eaten a poisonous mushroom until it's too late.
So it's crucial to recognize the symptoms early. Are there any telltale signs that can help people identify a death cap mushroom?
Death caps have a very specific look. They usually have a pale greenish-yellow cap, white gills, a white skirt-like ring around the stem, and a bulbous base that's enclosed in a sac-like vulva. But even experienced mushroom hunters can make mistakes.
So the message is, if you're not absolutely sure what kind of mushroom it is, don't eat it. Are there other poisonous mushrooms people should know about?
Definitely. The Amanita genus, which includes the death cap, is one to be extra careful about. There are other poisonous species in this group, like the destroying angel, Amanita virosa, and the fool's mushroom, Amanita verna. These also have amatoxins and can be deadly if eaten.
So it sounds like it's best to avoid the Amanita genus altogether when foraging for mushrooms. Are there any other dangerous mushrooms that might look like edible varieties?
Yeah, there are quite a few poisonous lookalikes that can trick even experienced foragers. The false morel, Gyromitra esculenta, is a good example. It can cause severe neurological damage, and its twisted shape can look a lot like edible morel mushrooms. Another dangerous one is the jack-o'-lantern mushroom, Omphaliotis oleracus, which can cause gastrointestinal problems and might be mistaken for edible chanterelle mushrooms.
It's a good reminder that nature can be beautiful and dangerous at the same time. We need to approach it with respect and caution. What tips would you give people for staying safe when foraging for wild mushrooms?
Foraging for mushrooms can be a fun and rewarding hobby, but safety should always come first. The golden rule is never eat a wild mushroom unless you are 100% sure of its identification. It's best to go foraging with a guide who knows what they're doing, someone who can teach you how to identify different species and help you tell the difference between edible and poisonous varieties.
So don't rely on websites or apps for identification.
Those can be helpful starting points, but never rely on them entirely for identifying a mushroom. You need to look at a lot of different characteristics: the cap shape, the gills, the stem, even the spore print. It's a skill that takes practice and is best learned from experienced foragers.
Okay, that makes sense. What about field guides and books? Are those reliable for identification?
Field guides and books can be really helpful tools, but make sure they're up to date and specific to your region. Mushroom species can vary a lot from place to place, and using an outdated or wrong guide could be dangerous.
So knowledge is key when it comes to foraging. What other safety measures should people take?
Always cook wild mushrooms thoroughly before you eat them. Some toxins can be neutralized or reduced by heat, but remember that cooking doesn't eliminate every toxin from every mushroom. And when you try a new type of wild mushroom, just start with a small portion. Some people can be allergic to certain varieties, and a small portion will minimize the risk of a severe reaction.
So be cautious and take it slow when you're exploring the world of wild mushrooms. What should someone do if they think they've eaten a poisonous mushroom?
Seek medical attention right away. Don't wait for symptoms to show up because some toxins, like amatoxins, can cause delayed reactions and serious organ damage. Time is critical in these cases, and if you can, bring a sample of the mushroom with you to the hospital. That will help with identification and treatment.
That's important information. The key takeaway here seems to be informed, be careful, and be prepared when it comes to wild mushrooms.
Exactly. Respect the potential dangers of fungi, and you can enjoy their benefits safely. With knowledge and awareness, we can appreciate their beauty and variety without putting ourselves at risk.
Now let's delve into something both fascinating and a bit unsettling. The role of fungi in decomposition. I'm particularly interested in the research you shared about using fungi to decompose human remains. Can you tell us more?
You're talking about funerary mycology, which explores the role of fungi in breaking down human remains. It's a relatively new area of study, but it's revealing some fascinating insights into what happens after death and how fungi help recycle nutrients back into the ecosystem.
It sounds a bit morbid, but also incredibly interesting. What are some of the key things we've learned from this field?
Well, research has shown that specific types of fungi colonize human remains at different stages of decomposition. These fungi are amazing at breaking down organic matter, transforming complex molecules into simpler compounds that can be used by other organisms or released back into the environment. They're basically nature's recyclers, making sure that nothing goes to waste.
So even in death, fungi are supporting life.
Exactly. They are an integral part of the circle of life, connecting death and decay with new life and growth.
What kinds of fungi are usually involved in this decomposition process?
The types of fungi that colonize human remains can change depending on environmental factors like temperature, humidity, and soil composition. But some common ones include Candida, Aspergillus, Penicillium, and Mucor. You might recognize those names because they're also associated with fungal infections in humans.
That's interesting. So the same fungi that can make us sick can also help break down organic matter.
You got it. It highlights the duality of many fungi. They can be good or bad depending on the context. In the case of decomposition, their role is beneficial. They help break down those complex organic molecules, releasing nutrients that can be used by other organisms. Even in decay, there's a lot of beauty and interconnection in the natural world.
It's fascinating how the same fungus can be both friend and foe. How does the fungal community change over time as decomposition happens? Are different fungi involved at different stages?
That's a great question. The types of fungi present shift as decomposition progresses, reflecting the changing environment of the decomposing body. In the early stages, when the body is still fresh, the fungal community is mostly yeasts, especially Candida species. These yeasts love the moist, nutrient-rich environment of a recently deceased body, and they feed on the sugars and other simple molecules that are readily available.
So it's like a microbial succession, where different groups of fungi take over as conditions change.
That's a great way to put it. As decomposition continues and the body's tissues break down, we start to see more filamentous fungi like Aspergillus and Penicillium. These have a wider range of enzymes, which allows them to break down more complex molecules like proteins and fats, which become more available as the body decomposes.
So they're like specialists, arriving on the scene when their particular skills are needed. What happens in the final stages of decomposition, when there's mostly just a skeleton left?
As the body gets more and more skeletonized, the fungal community changes again. Fungi that are really good at breaking down keratin, the tough protein in hair and nails, become dominant. It's interesting because these are often the same fungi that cause ringworm infections in living people. But in this context, they're playing an important role in breaking down the last remnants of the body, completing the cycle of decomposition.
So even the toughest parts of the body eventually break down and get recycled back into the ecosystem, all thanks to fungi.
Exactly. It's a remarkable demonstration of the power of fungal decomposition and their essential role in the circle of life. They make sure that even the most resistant organic materials get broken down eventually, and the nutrients are returned to the soil, nourishing new life.
It's really a fascinating and intricate web of life, and fungi are weaving it all together. Speaking of connections, I was really struck by the research you shared about how fungi can impact art and architecture.
Right. When it comes to art and architecture, fungi can be both creators and destroyers. They can be used as a medium for art, creating beautiful and unique pieces, like sculptures made from fungal mycelium. But on the other hand, they can be a threat to valuable works of art and historical structures, especially those made from organic materials like wood, paper, textiles, and paint.
I've seen pictures of those.
I've seen pictures of those mycelium sculptures. They're incredible. They look like something out of a science fiction movie. Tell me more about how artists are using fungi as a medium.
Yeah, it's a rapidly growing field, fueled by the creativity of artists and the unique properties of fungi. Artists are exploring the potential of fungal mycelium, which is that network of thread-like hyphae that makes up the vegetative part of a fungus. They are using it as a sustainable and versatile material to create all sorts of things. They're growing mycelium into complex shapes and forms, creating sculptures, furniture, even building materials, and packaging.
It's amazing how fungi can inspire such creative innovation. But you mentioned that fungi can also be destructive to art and architecture. How so?
Yeah, while fungi are super important for breaking down organic matter in the environment, their love for things like cellulose, lignin, and other organic compounds can be a real problem when it comes to preserving art and historical stuff. You see, fungi love damp environments and can feed on a wide range of materials, including wood, paper, textiles, and even paint. This means that artworks and buildings made from these materials are vulnerable to fungal damage, especially if they're not properly protected.
So just a little bit of moisture can create a perfect environment for fungi to grow and damage priceless works of art.
Exactly. Think about the Lascaux caves in France, which are famous for those prehistoric cave paintings.
Right.
Those paintings are thousands of years old and have been threatened by fungal growth because of changes in humidity and all the microorganisms brought in by visitors.
That's so sad to think about. Are there other examples of fungi damaging art and architecture?
Oh, definitely. Michelangelo's frescoes in the Sistine Chapel have also been affected by fungal growth over the centuries. And countless historical buildings and artifacts made from wood have suffered damage from wood decay fungi. It's a constant battle to protect these treasures from the forces of nature, including the often invisible world of fungi.
So it's an ongoing struggle to protect these irreplaceable pieces from the destructive power of fungi. What can we do to prevent or at least minimize this damage? Are there ways to safeguard these valuable works?
Well, one of the most important things is controlling humidity. Fungi need moisture to thrive, so keeping artworks and buildings dry is essential.
Okay, makes sense.
Proper ventilation and temperature control can help reduce the risk of fungal growth. It's all about making the environment less hospitable to them.
What about cleaning? Does that help prevent fungi from growing?
Yes, regular cleaning with the right methods is important too.
Okay.
But using harsh chemicals can sometimes damage the materials and can even create conditions that are more favorable to fungal growth. So it's a bit of a balancing act.
Oh, I see.
The best thing to do is to consult with conservators or other experts who specialize in preserving art and architecture. They can recommend the best cleaning methods for different materials and situations.
What about restoration? Can the damage from fungi be reversed after it's already happened?
Sometimes, yes. Conservators have developed special techniques to remove fungal growth and repair the damage. They use a combination of physical and chemical methods to carefully remove the fungi and stabilize the affected materials. But of course, prevention is always better than cure.
That makes you really appreciate the challenges involved in preserving our cultural heritage for future generations. It's amazing how much effort goes into protecting these treasures from the wear and tear of time, including the damage caused by fungi. Now, let's switch gears a bit and talk about something that's often linked to altered states of consciousness. Magic mushrooms.
Okay. Psilocybin mushrooms, which are often called magic mushrooms or shrooms, contain a psychoactive compound called psilocybin, which can cause hallucinations and changes in how people perceive reality.
I've heard stories about people having profound, even life-changing experiences on these mushrooms. What's the science behind psilocybin? How does it affect the brain?
Psilocybin is a tryptamine compound. It's actually structurally similar to the neurotransmitter serotonin. When you ingest it, your body converts it into psilocin, which then binds to serotonin receptors in the brain. That's what causes the changes in mood, perception, and thought.
So it's essentially hijacking the brain's serotonin system. That explains the dramatic shifts in consciousness. What are some of the typical effects of psilocybin? What do people actually experience when they take these mushrooms?
Psilocybin can have a really wide range of effects, both visual and emotional. People often report seeing and hearing things that aren't there, experiencing distortions of time and space, feeling euphoric and connected to everything around them, and even having mystical experiences. But it's important to remember that the specific effects can vary a lot depending on the person, the dose, the setting, and even the type of mushroom.
It sounds pretty intense. Are there any risks associated with using psilocybin?
Definitely. Some people might experience anxiety, paranoia, or even panic attacks while under the influence of psilocybin. High doses can lead to things like nausea, vomiting, and muscle weakness. It's really important to be careful and respectful when using psilocybin because the effects can be unpredictable and sometimes overwhelming.
What about the long-term effects? Is there any risk of lasting psychological damage?
We're still learning about the long-term effects of psilocybin use, but there's some concern that it might increase the risk of mental health problems in people who are already prone to them. More research is needed to understand the potential risks.
So it's definitely not something to mess around with. What's the legal status of psilocybin? Is it legal to use or possess?
Psilocybin is classified as a Schedule I drug in the United States. That means it has a high potential for abuse and no currently accepted medical use. Because of this classification, it's against the law to possess or use psilocybin in most places.
So it's still illegal in most parts of the world, but I've also been hearing about increasing interest in exploring the therapeutic potential of psilocybin. What's the reasoning behind that?
Despite its legal status, there's a lot of interest in studying how psilocybin might be used to treat mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, addiction, and even distress at the end of life. Some studies have shown promising results using psilocybin in a controlled therapeutic environment, suggesting that it could offer a new and effective way to treat these challenging conditions.
So psilocybin might one day be a legitimate medical treatment.
That's the hope. There are several clinical trials happening right now to investigate how safe and effective psilocybin is for various medical conditions. If these trials are successful, they could really change how we approach mental health treatment. It's pretty incredible to think that a substance that's been demonized for so long might actually have healing potential.
It really highlights the complexity of the human brain and the potential for using psychedelics in controlled therapeutic settings. What about the historical use of psilocybin mushrooms? Was it purely recreational, or was there a spiritual aspect to it as well?
Psilocybin mushrooms have a long history of use in spiritual and religious ceremonies, especially in indigenous cultures in Mexico and Central America. These cultures have been using psilocybin mushrooms for centuries as a way to connect with the divine, explore consciousness, and facilitate healing.
So there's a rich tradition of using these mushrooms for spiritual growth and self-discovery. It seems like fungi have been closely tied to human culture and spirituality for a very long time.
Absolutely. Fungi have been both revered and feared throughout history, and their influence can be seen in our art, mythology, and even our language. They've inspired awe, wonder, and sometimes even terror, and they continue to intrigue us today.
It's a good reminder that these often overlooked organisms have played a big role in shaping human experience and continue to do so in ways we're only just beginning to understand. Let's shift gears now from the psychedelic realm to the ecological realm. You sent me some research that emphasizes the crucial role of fungi in ecosystems around the world. Can you elaborate on that?
Fungi are like the unsung heroes of nature, playing a vital role in keeping ecosystems balanced and healthy. They're essential for decomposition, nutrient cycling, and symbiotic relationships with plants. And they're involved in so many other ecological processes that we're just starting to appreciate.
I know that fungi are decomposers, but can you break that down a bit further? Why is decomposition so important for ecosystems?
Sure. Fungi are heterotrophs, which means they can't make their own food like plants do. Instead, they get their nutrients by breaking down organic matter, like dead plants, animals, and fallen leaves. Think of them as nature's cleanup crew, breaking down all that dead stuff and releasing nutrients back into the ecosystem.
So they're like nature's recyclers, ensuring that nutrients are constantly flowing through the ecosystem. What would happen if fungi weren't there to do this crucial job?
If we didn't have fungi, ecosystems would basically shut down. Dead plants and animals would pile up, and all the nutrients they contained would be locked away, unusable by other organisms. The whole flow of energy and matter through the ecosystem would be disrupted, leading to less biodiversity and a decline in the overall health of the ecosystem.
It's incredible to think about how these often invisible organisms are so important for keeping ecosystems running smoothly. Their role in decomposition is clearly crucial. But you mentioned that they're also involved in nutrient cycling. Can you explain how that works?
Absolutely. When fungi break down organic matter, they release nutrients back into the soil. These nutrients are then available for plants to absorb and use for growth. This cycle of decomposition and nutrient uptake is essential for keeping ecosystems healthy and productive. Without fungi, plants would have a hard time getting the nutrients they need to grow and survive.
So it's a beautiful cycle of give and take, with fungi playing a key role in connecting the living and non-living parts of the ecosystem. You also mentioned that fungi form symbiotic relationships with plants. We talked about mycorrhiza earlier. But are there any other types of symbiotic relationships between fungi and plants?
Yes, there are. Besides mycorrhiza, there are other fascinating symbiotic relationships between fungi and plants. For example, we have endophytic fungi, which live within the tissues of plants without causing any harm.
So they're like tiny hidden residents inside the plant. Do they provide any benefits to their plant hosts?
They're like microscopic roommates, and they can actually offer quite a few benefits. Some endophytic fungi produce compounds that protect the plant from things that want to eat them or from diseases. Others can boost plant growth or help them tolerate stress like drought or salty conditions. It's a fascinating world of hidden partnerships that scientists are only beginning to understand.
It seems like fungi have this amazing ability to form win-win relationships with other organisms. We've talked about their partnerships with plants, but what about animals? Do fungi team up with animals too?
They sure do. Fungi form these incredible symbiotic relationships with all sorts of animals. One really interesting example is the relationship between leafcutter ants and fungi.
Leafcutter ants, I've seen them marching in long lines carrying bits of leaves. What do they do with those leaves?
Leafcutter ants are actually expert gardeners. They don't actually eat the leaves they collect. They use them to grow a specific kind of fungus inside their nests.
Oh, wow.
They chew up the leaves, creating a perfect bed for the fungus to grow. And the fungus breaks down the leaves, releasing nutrients that the ants then eat.
So it's like a tiny farm with the ants acting as farmers and the fungi as their crops.
That's a great way to think about it. It's a fantastic example of mutualism, where both the ants and the fungi get something out of the relationship. The ants provide food and shelter for the fungus, and the fungus gives the ants a nutritious meal.
It's amazing how complex and interconnected these relationships can be. What are some other examples of fungi partnering with animals?
Another fascinating example is the relationship between termites and fungi. Some termite species grow fungi inside their nests, just like those leafcutter ants. And the fungi help the termites digest wood, which is their main source of food.
So the termites depend on the fungi to survive.
Exactly. Without their fungal partners, these termites wouldn't be able to digest the wood and they would starve. It's a great example of how symbiotic relationships can drive evolution and shape the diversity of life on Earth.
It reminds us that we're all interconnected, and even tiny organisms like fungi can have a huge impact on the web of life. Now let's talk about a different aspect of fungal ecology: their role in bioremediation, which is the process of using living organisms to clean up pollution in the environment.
So fungi can help us clean up our messes. That's interesting. Tell me more about that.
Some fungi are amazing at breaking down and detoxifying a wide range of pollutants, including pesticides, heavy metals, and even radioactive waste. They produce enzymes that can break these pollutants down, making them less harmful, or they can immobilize them in the soil, preventing them from leaching into groundwater or harming other organisms.
That's incredible. It's like they have a natural solution for some of our most pressing environmental problems. Can you give me some specific examples of how fungi are being used in bioremediation?
Absolutely. Fungi are being used to clean up oil spills, get rid of toxins in contaminated soil, and even break down plastic waste. For example, some types of fungi have been shown to break down petroleum hydrocarbons, the main components of crude oil. They're also being used to remove heavy metals like lead, mercury, and arsenic from soil and water.
So fungi aren't just decomposers, they're also detoxifiers, helping to repair the damage we've done to the environment.
Exactly. They have this incredible ability to clean up pollutants and restore balance to ecosystems, and we're only just beginning to explore their potential for bioremediation.
It's inspiring to think about how we can use the power of nature, especially the often forgotten kingdom of fungi, to heal the planet and create a more sustainable future.
I agree. And as research continues, we're likely to find even more amazing ways to use fungi in bioremediation and other environmental solutions.
So we've discussed the important role of fungi in decomposition, nutrient cycling, and symbiotic relationships, and we've explored their potential for cleaning up pollutants and restoring balance to ecosystems. It's clear that fungi are incredibly versatile organisms with a wide range of ecological roles. But what about their role in evolution? How have fungi shaped the evolution of life on Earth?
Fungi have had a huge influence on the evolution of life on Earth. They've been around for a very long time, at least a billion years, and their presence has had a profound impact on how other organisms have evolved.
Wow, a billion years. So they were on Earth long before plants and animals even existed.
That's right. They were some of the first organisms to colonize land. Their ability to break down rocks and organic matter helped create the conditions that were necessary for plants to evolve and move onto land.
So fungi paved the way for plants to take over the land.
Exactly. They were the pioneers of terrestrial life, and their presence was essential for the development of soil and the establishment of terrestrial ecosystems.
What about animals? Have fungi influenced how animals have evolved too?
While the relationship between fungi and animals might not be as obvious as the one between fungi and plants, it's just as important. Fungi have shaped animal evolution in many ways, from providing food sources to influencing the development of immune systems.
Can you give me some specific examples of how fungi have impacted animal evolution?
Of course. Some of the earliest animals evolved to eat fungi, making them a part of their diet. This likely led to the development of digestive enzymes and other adaptations that helped these animals efficiently extract nutrients from fungi.
So fungi provided a food source that drove the evolution of certain animal lineages. Are there other ways that fungi have shaped how animals have evolved?
Definitely. Fungi can also be pathogens, and their presence has shaped the evolution of animal immune systems. Animals have developed sophisticated ways to defend themselves against fungal infections, and this ongoing arms race between fungi and animals has led to the diverse and complex immune systems we see today.
So it's this constant battle for survival, with both fungi and animals evolving strategies to outsmart each other.
Exactly. It's a great example of coevolution, where two interacting species influence each other's evolutionary journeys.
It's mind-blowing to think about the long and complex history of fungi and their impact on life as we know it. They've been shaping ecosystems, driving evolution, and influencing human culture for a billion years. And they still continue to amaze and inspire us today.
It really is a testament to their adaptability, resilience, and ecological importance. And there's still so much that we don't know about them. New discoveries are being made all the time, and the field of mycology is constantly growing and changing.
It feels like we've only scratched the surface of this incredible and mysterious kingdom of life. What are some of the roles that fungi play in the natural world that people often overlook?
Fungi are involved in so many processes that we might not even realize. For example, they're involved in bioluminescence, the ability of living organisms to emit light.
Wait, you mean fungi can glow? I know fireflies and some deep-sea creatures can glow, but fungi too.
Yes, some fungi are bioluminescent, emitting the soft, greenish light. Imagine walking through a forest at night and seeing these glowing mushrooms. It's truly magical.
That's incredible. It sounds like something out of a fairy tale. Why do they glow? Is there a reason for it, or is it just a happy accident?
Scientists are still studying the exact function of fungal bioluminescence, but there are a few theories. One is that the glow attracts insects, which can then help spread the fungal spores.
So it's like a beacon guiding insects to the fungi so they can help it reproduce. What are some of the other theories?
Another theory is that the glow might actually be a warning signal to keep animals from eating the fungi. Some bioluminescent fungi are poisonous, so the glow could be a way of advertising their toxicity.
That makes sense. It's like a neon sign saying, don't eat me.
We've talked about fungal spores and their impact on asthma, but do fungi play other roles in the atmosphere? Yeah, we often think about fungi as being in the soil or attached to trees, but their influence reaches much farther than that. Fungi release huge amounts of spores into the air, and these tiny reproductive units are a major part of airborne particles.
You mean every breath we take includes fungal spores? That's kind of wild. Does that have other implications?
Absolutely. Those spores can travel vast distances on wind and air currents. They can even reach the upper atmosphere and affect cloud formation and rainfall patterns. It's like they're these tiny travelers shaping the weather and connecting distant ecosystems.
Wow. So fungi are actually influencing the weather.
They definitely seem to be playing a role, although it's still an active area of research. Scientists are studying how these airborne spores interact with atmospheric particles and influence the formation of clouds and precipitation. It's really fascinating research that's shedding light on how interconnected all of Earth's systems are.
It's a great reminder that even the tiniest organisms can have a huge impact on the world around us. We've talked about their role in the air, but what about their role on the ground? We already discussed how important they are for decomposition and nutrient cycling, but are there other ways that fungi affect soil health?
Oh, fungi are essential for soil health in so many ways. They contribute to soil structure, aggregation, and water retention. Their hyphae act like tiny threads, binding soil particles together and creating pathways for water and air to move through. They also help to break down organic matter, releasing nutrients that enrich the soil and support plant growth.
So they're like the architects and engineers of the soil, creating a fertile and healthy environment for plants and other organisms.
That's a great analogy. And their role in maintaining healthy soil can't be overstated. Healthy soils are crucial for agriculture, forestry, and the overall functioning of ecosystems. And fungi are key players in keeping those soils healthy.
It's a good reminder that we need to protect and care for our soils, and part of that means appreciating the important role that fungi play in those ecosystems. We've talked a lot about the benefits of fungi, but we know that some fungi can be harmful too. We discussed poisonous mushrooms and fungal infections, but can you tell us more about other types of fungal toxins and the dangers they pose?
Fungi produce a vast array of compounds, and some of them are incredibly toxic. We've already talked about amatoxins, the deadly toxins found in deathcap mushrooms, and mycotoxins, which can contaminate food and cause a variety of health problems. But there are other fungal toxins out there that are less well known but just as dangerous.
What are some examples of those lesser-known fungal toxins?
One group to watch out for is the ergot alkaloids, which are produced by fungi in the genus Claviceps. These alkaloids can contaminate grains like rye and wheat and can cause a condition called ergotism.
Ergotism. What are the symptoms of that?
Ergotism is pretty scary, to be honest. It can manifest in all sorts of ways, from hallucinations and seizures to gangrene and even death. The symptoms are caused by the ergot alkaloids messing with blood circulation and nervous system function.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
Was ergotism a big problem in the past?
It was a serious issue, especially in Europe, where rye bread was a staple food. Outbreaks of ergotism, which was also called St. Anthony's fire, were common during the Middle Ages and caused a lot of suffering and death.
Are ergot alkaloids still a concern today, or have we managed to eliminate the risk of ergotism?
Modern agriculture has drastically reduced the risk of ergot contamination, but it can still happen in places where grain crops aren't properly monitored and controlled.
So it's still something to be aware of, especially for people who eat a lot of grains. Are there other kinds of fungal toxins that we might come into contact with in our everyday lives?
Another group to be aware of is the trichothecene mycotoxins, which are produced by fungi in the genus Fusarium. These toxins can contaminate lots of crops, including wheat, barley, corn, and rice, and they can also be found in buildings that are contaminated with mold.
Moldy buildings, so we can be exposed to these toxins just by being inside.
It's possible, especially if there's water damage or poor ventilation that allows mold to grow. Trichothecenes can cause a range of symptoms like vomiting, diarrhea, skin irritation, and even a weakened immune system. They can also damage the respiratory system and internal organs.
So it's really important to take care of any mold problems in our homes and workplaces to reduce our exposure to these toxins.
Absolutely. Mold should never be ignored. If you see mold growing in your home or workplace, get it properly remediated to prevent potential health problems.
What about using fungal toxins for medical purposes? Can we use these harmful substances for good?
It might seem counterintuitive, but even though some fungal toxins are dangerous, they've shown potential for medical applications. It's all about the dose and how they're used.
Can you give us some examples of how fungal toxins are being used in medicine?
Sure, ergot alkaloids, which can cause ergotism, have actually been used to treat migraines and to induce labor. They're powerful vasoconstrictors, which means they constrict blood vessels, and that can be helpful in some medical situations.
So there's this fine line between toxicity and therapeutic benefit. Are there any other examples?
Another great example is cyclosporine, a drug that suppresses the immune system and is used to prevent organ rejection after a transplant. It's actually derived from a fungus called Tolipocladium inflatum.
Wow. So a fungus is helping save lives by preventing organ rejection. That's pretty incredible.
It is, and it shows us that we can use even the most toxic substances for good when we study them carefully and use them in a controlled medical environment.
What about the future of research on fungal toxins? Where do you see this field going?
Research on fungal toxins is a dynamic and evolving field, and there's still so much to learn about how they work and their potential uses. Scientists are working on new ways to detect and detoxify these toxins in food and the environment, and they're exploring how we might use them to develop new drugs and even biopesticides.
So as a field full of both challenges and opportunities, it's amazing to think that these substances that can be so harmful could also have the potential to benefit humanity.
Exactly. It highlights the power of scientific research and how important it is to understand the complexities of the natural world, even the parts that seem scary and dangerous.
We've covered a lot of ground in our exploration of fungi today, from the microscopic to the macroscopic, from the beneficial to the harmful, and from the culinary to the ecological. It's clear that these often overlooked organisms are incredibly important for our lives and the health of our planet.
Absolutely. Fungi are a fundamental part of life as we know it, and understanding their biology and their role in the environment is essential for appreciating how interconnected all living things really are.
What are some of the main things we've learned from our deep dive into the world of fungi?
Well, the first thing is that fungi are everywhere. They're in the air, in our food, in the soil, and even in our bodies. They're all around us, even if we don't always see them.
It is humbling to think about how abundant and diverse they are, and how they're involved in every aspect of our lives. What other key takeaways should we keep in mind?
Another key point is that fungi are essential for life on Earth. They're crucial for decomposition, nutrient cycling, and symbiotic relationships, all of which help keep ecosystems healthy and productive across the globe. They're the unsung heroes of nature, working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep things running smoothly.
It's a great reminder that we're all part of this delicate web of life, and that even seemingly insignificant organisms like fungi play vital roles. What other important things have we learned?
Well, it's important to remember that fungi can be both good and bad for humans. They give us food, medicine, and even inspiration for art and spirituality. But they can also cause diseases, spoil our food, and damage our buildings. It's a complex relationship that requires both respect and understanding.
So we need to approach fungi with both appreciation and caution, learning how to harness their benefits while also being mindful of the risks. What other insights have we gained from exploring the world of fungi?
I think the most important thing we've learned is that there's still so much we don't know about fungi. New discoveries are being made all the time, and the field of mycology is constantly evolving. It's a really exciting time to be studying fungi as we're constantly uncovering new secrets about these fascinating organisms and how they impact the world around us.
It seems like we've only just begun to explore the amazing world of fungi. What about their incredible adaptations? What makes them so good at surviving in such a wide range of environments?
One of the key things is their unique cell structure. Fungal cells have a rigid cell wall that's made of chitin, which is a tough, protective material. It allows them to withstand all sorts of challenging conditions. Think of it like a suit of armor that protects them from the elements and allows them to thrive in places where other organisms would struggle.
So their cell walls are like tiny shields keeping them safe.
Exactly. And this chitin armor also allows fungi to grow in a variety of shapes and sizes, from microscopic yeasts to those giant mushrooms you see. They're incredibly versatile.
I've seen pictures of those giant puffball mushrooms. They're enormous. It's hard to believe that something so big can be made up of tiny fungal cells.
I know, right? They really are remarkable organisms. Another important adaptation is their ability to reproduce both sexually and asexually. This gives them the flexibility to adapt to different conditions and colonize new environments very effectively.
Can you explain how sexual and asexual reproduction are different in fungi and why having both is such an advantage?
Sure, sexual reproduction in fungi involves combining genetic material from two different individuals, which creates offspring with more genetic diversity. This diversity is crucial for adaptation because it allows fungal populations to evolve and survive in changing environments.
So sexual reproduction is all about mixing things up and creating new gene combinations.
hmm
What about asexual reproduction? How does that work?
Asexual reproduction allows fungi to produce offspring that are genetically identical to the parent. It's a much faster and more efficient way to reproduce, especially when conditions are favorable and there's no need for genetic variation.
So it's like cloning, creating copies of the parent fungus.
Exactly. Fungi can reproduce asexually through various methods like budding, fragmentation, and producing spores.
So they have a whole toolbox of reproductive strategies. Why is it advantageous to have both sexual and asexual reproduction?
Well, having both options allows fungi to adapt to a wide range of situations. When conditions are stable and resources are plentiful, they can reproduce asexually and spread quickly. But when conditions change or resources become scarce, they can switch to sexual reproduction to create offspring with greater genetic diversity, giving them a better chance of survival.
That's a really smart survival strategy. What other adaptations make fungi so successful?
Another amazing adaptation is their ability to create complex networks of hyphae, those thread-like structures that make up the body of the fungus. These hyphae can grow and branch out extensively, forming this huge network called a mycelium.
We talked about mycelium before, but can you remind me what it is and why it's so important for fungi?
The mycelium is basically the hidden part of the fungus, usually found underground or within whatever the fungus is growing on. This network of hyphae allows fungi to explore their surroundings efficiently, look for food, and even communicate with each other.
Communicate. Are you telling me that fungi can talk to each other?
Not like humans talk, no. But they can communicate through chemical signals that travel along those hyphae. They can share information about the availability of nutrients, potential dangers, and even mating opportunities. It's a really fascinating example of biological communication that scientists are still working to decode.
It's incredible to imagine these silent conversations happening right under our feet. What other adaptations contribute to fungi's remarkable abilities?
Well, fungi are masters of decomposition, and that's because they produce a wide variety of enzymes that can break down even the toughest organic molecules, like lignin, cellulose, and keratin.
Those are the same materials that make up wood, plant cell walls, and even our own hair and nails, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing that fungi can break down such strong materials.
It is. Those enzymes are the key to their success as decomposers. They're like little chemical factories, churning out specialized tools to break down whatever they come across.
What about their ability to form those symbiotic relationships? We've already talked about mycorrhizae and endophytes, but are there other examples of fungi teaming up with other organisms?
Oh, definitely. Fungi are masters of collaboration. They form partnerships with a wide array of organisms, including bacteria, algae, and even animals.
Can you give us some examples of these unusual partnerships?
Sure, some fungi live inside the guts of insects, helping them to digest plant material. Others form partnerships with algae, creating lichens, those colorful organisms you see growing on rocks and trees. And as we talked about earlier, leafcutter ants and termites cultivate fungi within their nests for food.
It seems like fungi figured out how to partner with almost every other type of organism on Earth. It really shows how adaptable they are and how important they are in the web of life.
Absolutely. Fungi are a testament to the power of teamwork and the interconnectedness of all living things.
Now let's delve into a fascinating and unique partnership between fungi and algae. Lichens. They might seem like simple organisms, but they're actually quite complex, right?
You got it. Lichens are these fascinating composite organisms. They're not a single species, but rather a symbiotic partnership between a fungus and a photosynthetic partner, which is usually an alga or a cyanobacterium.
So it's like a two-for-one deal. A fungus and an alga working together as one.
Exactly. It's a remarkable example of mutualism where both partners benefit. The fungus provides structure, protection, and moisture, while the alga or cyanobacterium provides food through photosynthesis. It's like a tiny ecosystem all in one package.
It's like a miniature world, a self-contained partnership. Where do you find lichens? I feel like I've seen them growing on rocks and trees.
But are they found in other places too?
You're right, lichens are often found growing on rocks and trees. You can find them in all sorts of places. They can grow on soil, on buildings, even on car windshields. They're incredibly resilient and adaptable, able to survive in some of the most extreme environments on Earth.
Wow. They're like the ultimate survivors. It makes you wonder how they manage to thrive in such diverse habitats.
It's amazing, isn't it? Well, one of the keys to their success is their symbiotic partnership. Remember, they're not a single organism, but a team effort between a fungus and an alga or a cyanobacterium.
Right, that's what makes them so unique. So how does this partnership help them survive in such harsh conditions?
Well, the fungus in the lichen provides a protective home for the alga, shielding it from the elements and providing it with water and nutrients. And the alga, in turn, provides food for the fungus through photosynthesis. This teamwork allows them to survive in places where neither partner could survive on its own.
That's a great example of how cooperation can lead to success even in the toughest environments. I've always been fascinated by the variety of colors and shapes you see in lichens. Some are bright green, others are orange or yellow, and some are even black. And they come in all sorts of interesting forms. What's the story behind this diversity?
Lichens come in an amazing array of colors, shapes, and textures. It's part of what makes them so fascinating to study.
I agree. Can you tell us more about the different types of lichens?
Sure. Some lichens are crustose, meaning they form this thin crust on a surface, almost like a splash of paint. Others are foliose, and they look more like leafy structures, delicate and intricate. And then we have the fruticose lichens, which grow upright, like tiny shrubs branching out in all directions.
It's amazing how diverse they are. I never realized there were so many different types of lichens. What about their ecological role? What do they do for the ecosystems they live in?
Lichens are really important in many ecosystems, even though they often go unnoticed. They're a food source for animals like reindeer and caribou, especially in those harsh, cold environments where other food is hard to come by.
Wow.
They also provide nesting materials for birds. Their soft, textured bodies make great camouflaged nests. And get this, they even help with soil formation by breaking down rocks.
Oh, cool.
Their tiny threads can slowly dissolve those hard surfaces, creating the conditions for new life to take hold.
So they're important for the food web, for shelter, and even for creating soil. It's incredible how these seemingly simple organisms can do so much. I've also heard that lichens are sensitive to air pollution. Is that true?
You heard right. Lichens are like tiny air quality monitors. They absorb nutrients and pollutants from the air. And because they're so sensitive to air pollution, they're really valuable bioindicators, giving us clues about the health of the environment.
So by looking at the health of lichens, we can get an idea of how clean the air is in a particular area. That's a really clever way to assess the environment.
Exactly. They can tell us about the levels of pollutants in the air. That helps us pinpoint areas that are affected by pollution and track changes in air quality over time. They're like the canaries in the coal mine when it comes to air pollution.
It's amazing how these simple organisms can teach us so much about the health of our planet. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about a topic that often gets strong reactions from people: mycophobia, the fear of fungi.
Mycophobia, the fear or aversion to fungi, is more common than you might think. And it can be a real obstacle to appreciating the beauty and importance of fungi.
You know, I have to admit, I used to be a bit mycophobic myself. I always thought of fungi as gross or dangerous, something to stay away from. But after learning so much about them, my view has completely changed. Why do you think people have such strong negative feelings toward fungi? Where does this fear come from?
Mycophobia is a complex issue. It probably comes from a mix of cultural and biological factors. In many cultures, fungi are associated with things like decay, disease, and even death. This negative view might be because some fungi can cause illnesses or make food go bad.
Right, that makes sense. It's natural to avoid something that could potentially harm you or make you sick.
Exactly. It's a natural response to a potential threat. Another factor could be our evolutionary history. Our ancestors had to be careful about eating poisonous mushrooms, so maybe having a natural aversion to fungi was an advantage, helping them avoid potentially deadly encounters.
So it could be a survival mechanism that's been passed down through generations, helping us stay safe.
That's one theory. Whatever the reason, mycophobia can really prevent people from appreciating the beauty and importance of fungi. It can keep them from fully engaging with this fascinating kingdom of life and understanding how crucial fungi are for our world.
I agree. It's sad that this fear stops people from seeing how amazing and awe-inspiring fungi can be. So how can we overcome mycophobia? How can we change our perspective and see fungi for the incredible organisms they truly are?
I think education is key. When we learn more about fungi, their biology, ecology, and cultural significance, we start to appreciate them more. We have to go beyond those stereotypes and see fungi for what they really are: fascinating, diverse, and ecologically essential organisms.
You need to celebrate fungi as the ecological superheroes they are. They're nature's recyclers, connectors, collaborators, healers, and even artists.
Well said. As we wrap up our deep dive into the world of fungi, do you have any final thoughts for our listener?
I encourage everyone listening to continue exploring this fascinating world of fungi. There's always something new to learn and discover. Read books, watch documentaries, join a local mushroom club, or just go for a walk in the woods and take in the diversity of fungi around you. Use your senses, appreciate their beauty, and think about how important they are for the environment.
Those are great suggestions. I'm already feeling inspired to go on a fungal adventure myself. What about the future of mycology? Where do you see this field going in the coming years?
The future of mycology is so bright. People are becoming more and more aware of how important fungi are for the environment and their potential for solving global challenges. There's a lot of interest and investment in this field right now.
What are some of the most exciting things on the horizon?
I see huge potential for using fungi in bioremediation, biofuels, and even space exploration. They're a source of untapped potential, just waiting for curious and innovative people to explore.
Space exploration, that's amazing. How could fungi be used in space?
Scientists are thinking about using fungi to create bioregenerative life support systems for long-duration missions. Imagine growing food and recycling waste using fungi in a closed-loop system, all in space. Fungi could also be used to make biofuels and even building materials using those incredible mycelial networks.
It seems like the possibilities with fungi are endless. They truly are a natural wonder, full of surprises and potential.
I agree. They're a kingdom of life that's constantly surprising us.
Well, this has been an incredible journey into the world of fungi. I've learned so much, and my appreciation for these amazing organisms has grown immensely.
I'm so happy to hear that. It's been a pleasure to share my passion for fungi with you and our listeners.
To everyone listening, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive as much as we have. We encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep being amazed by the wonders of the fungal kingdom. There's a whole world of fungal knowledge out there waiting to be discovered.
And remember, fungi are everywhere, even if you can't see them. They're a crucial part of the web of life, and they deserve our attention and appreciation.
Thanks for joining us on this fungal adventure. We hope you'll tune in again next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, keep exploring.